Many retirees can retire earlier than they think because of the changes that happen to their retirement savings after 55. Over the past decade, I've helped many clients achieve their retirement goals by giving them non-complicated, easy to follow retirement savings advice. Unfortunately, many retirees get caught up in complicated things they hear online that in many cases delay their retirement. That's why in this video today, I'll be walking you through some simple reasons why your retirement savings explode after 55 and why that could mean you can retire a lot sooner than you thought. So let's get right into it. I'm going to take this video in a direction that is a little counterintuitive and not something that you're probably hearing in other places quite a bit. Most of the content that I see online from both financial institutions and other creators is all around, hey, as you get later in your working career, look at all these extra ways you can be saving and putting away more and more money into your retirement. If you're someone who has not saved very much, or you weren't able to save quite a bit earlier in your career, then some of that advice probably applies to you, if possible. But where I want to take this is more based on the types of people that I have worked with over the years, especially people who are trying to retire before that typical age 65 or whatever. Say you're trying to retire in your 50s or maybe even earlier or maybe early 60s, that sort of thing. Had a good career, whether you're married or not, but you've been able to accumulate quite a bit of assets. And now you're getting to kind of the home stretch into your 50s and you're thinking about, okay, how do I prioritize all the different kind of financial things that are coming at me? So I wanna go over and provide kind of a different perspective, and then also just some helpful tips about where I think you should probably prioritize your savings based on, just practical things that I've seen and experienced with clients over the years. So first, to set the stage, when someone's in their 50s, some typical or some common characteristics, obviously this doesn't apply to everybody, but just bear with me here a little bit. So usually you're earning more than you did earlier in your career. A lot of times that compensation you're getting is higher. It's also more complicated. Performance-based compensation. Maybe you have deferred comp that you can participate in. You have maybe stock-based compensation or equity in the business that you're working for or running. And so with all these with the higher compensation, with the different forms of compensation, there's extra complexity. There's extra tax issues to deal with and face. And it can be, frankly, very stressful. And also, when you're at that stage of your career, probably just from just a straightforward work situation, there's just more responsibilities, higher expectations, and it can just be a very stressful time. So, and on top of that, if we're talking about finances, outside of work, there's other kind of financial pressures that usually hit people around this time. You might have kids that are graduating high school, getting into college, or maybe even getting married, and so you have these other kind of financial expectations, whether they're explicit, like, hey, we promise we're going to pay for college or for a wedding or whatever, or it's just kind of like you just kind of feel that pressure even though you haven't maybe explicitly said that you would cover something. There's just more financial expectations, and so you're faced kind of trying to balance making sure you're good to go for your own retirement, maybe some of these other things that are really important to you as well. You might have other financial goals or things that you've been wanting to do for a long time, like maybe, paying off your house. It's something that a lot of people want to have get done before they retire. I'm not saying you need to do that, but for a lot of people, this is a goal. And so, you're trying to balance like, man, where do I put this extra money? So what I want to do is go through a situation of somebody who has been saving, type of person that I usually work with, someone who started saving when they were younger. And by the time they get into their 50s, they've accumulated quite a bit of assets, and they're now thinking about, okay, I have the money to keep saving, but I also have these other, huge demands and priorities happening in my life right now, and I feel just a ton of stress and pressure about, I just, laying awake at night, afraid that maybe I'm not saving enough or prepared enough. And so I want to jump into the numbers, the math of the whole thing to kind of lay bare how things usually are, and hopefully with that foundation, we can take away some very just kind of practical ways to manage your money at this stage of your career. So let's jump over to my spreadsheet. For this example here, I've got somebody who started working and they're 25, married or single. Let's say combined compensation is about $80,000 a year. And for contribution into their retirement plan, let's say that, between their own contribution and a match, whatever those percentages are, there's about 15% that's going into their retirement plan. We have a 9% rate of return. We're talking about 3% inflation. What I want to show you here is that early in your career, as you're making contributions into your retirement account, you can see that, or what I'm going to illustrate for you is that so much of the growth of your retirement savings depends on your contribution. It is so heavily skewed towards contribution, and the rate of return that you get is less important. And then frankly, this is going to flip. And so let's look over that. At age 25, let's just say that, at the end of the year, you have a balance of $12,000 because that's what you've contributed. Now, the next year, inflation adjusted salary, you have contributed $12,360, and your balance is now $25,440. So with that, the market growth in the account from that 1 year to the next is about $1,000, $1,080. Now, if we look at the increase in value of the account, right, we have a couple things going on. We have market growth, and then we also have the new contributions going in. So if we divide that and look at market growth divided by the contribution, the market growth is about 10% of the contribution amount. So you can see at this early stage of saving for retirement that your contributions are by far the more important. 90% of that increase is attributable to the contribution. The market growth is almost a little bit of an afterthought at this point. Not totally, but you kind of get my point. So let's go down 5 years. Okay, so 29, the balance in your account, $75,000, contributions of $13,500 have gone into that. Now your market growth is about 5,100, based on these assumptions. So now your contribution or your market growth is about 40% of your contribution. All right, now as we go along, let's get to, year 10. So by year 10, you have a balance of $204,000, new contributions into the account of $15,650, and market growth at this point is $15,600. And just under $600. So finally, after 10 years, the ratio of your market growth relative to contribution, they now basically equal each other. So for the first 10 years of your, saving into retirement, the first 10 years are all skewed towards your contribution as the most important variable. What you earn, obviously important, but not as important, relatively less important. And so now as we go on, you can see that this ratio here, you're going to see what this is essentially saying is that the market growth relative to your contribution is going to become far and far greater. So, the next year, in a year 11, your market growth in the account is equal to about 110%, 1.1 amount of contribution. So 18,000 worth of growth relative to $16,000 of contribution. And the next year, your contribution, same percentages based on everything, 16,600, and now your market growth is 21,500. So your growth in the account is now about 1.3 times your contribution amount. So as we go further along into through your career, you're going to see that pretty soon it just totally dwarfs it. So by age 40, based on these assumptions, by age 40, your market growth is about 2 times your contribution amount. So we get down here. Once we hit, about age 45, now within about, 4 or 5 years, now all of a sudden your market growth is about 3 times your contribution amount. By the time we get to 48, you can see there's kind of an acceleration here. It took 10 years. It took 10 years for your growth, the amount of the market growth to equal the contribution amount. It took another 6 years for it to double again. Now it takes, about 4 more years for it to be 3 times, just a couple more years for it to be 4 times. By the time you get to age 50 here, what I've highlighted, a bit arbitrarily, but it does line up because at age 50, this is when you're getting bombarded with, hey, you know what, you're over 50, you can do catch-up contributions, extra to the 401k, extra to the IRA account, extra to your HSA, right? And so, if you have the income and everything is great, you're able to balance all the other saving priorities in your life and do that, rock and roll, good on you. But maybe if you're at the point where now all of a sudden you're having to make choices about like, are we gonna be able to pay for our daughter's wedding, or should I contribute an extra, whatever? Should I maximize all these different retirement savings opportunities? So if you're in a situation where you're having to start making decisions, let's take a look at this. So once you get to age 50, you can see here that the contribution going into the same, if we're talking about 15% of the compensation, we've got 25,000 going into retirement, but the growth just on the portfolio, because now we're talking about 1.4 million. The growth on this, we're looking at over $115,000. That contribution amount is, or I should say, the growth of the portfolio is almost 5 times the amount of the contribution. Okay, so as we go along, and in column I, we're not making contributions anymore. And in column G, we are making contributions. And this is a little maybe kind of over the top. What I want to model is that all of a sudden, if you were to stop making contributions into retirement by age 50, that the impact is actually smaller than you might realize. So between age 50 and 55, making the contributions, your portfolio grew from about 1.4 and a half to 2.4 million. Okay, now let's say you had stopped making contributions at this point, 1.45, and by the time you're at 55, instead of 2.39 million, you're at 2.2. Okay, so obviously the growth between those two was less, right? But all of a sudden, the downside here is the impact of it is not as great as it would have been in the past if you had stopped contributing, in years 1 through 10, especially, or in years 10 through 20. So now you can see that as we go along, by age 60, 3.8 million, 3.4 million. So obviously, if all else being equal, to have 3.8 versus 3.4, obviously you'd rather have 3.8 million in your retirement accounts. But when we pair this with trying to factor in other priorities like helping with college, helping with weddings, that sort of thing, all of a sudden, you might need to cut back or make some compromises. And the whole point that I want you to take away from this part of the video is that if you've prepared well earlier in your career, by the time you're getting into your 50s, the market growth that's happening from year to year is so much greater than your contributions. 5 times your contribution, 6 times the contribution from year to year. And so all of a sudden, your kind of that flywheel has gotten going, that exponential growth is happening, and your portfolio, your money is now able to work harder and do more than what you can even contribute on a year-to-year basis. Now, obviously, this is making some assumptions about the market and growth, et cetera, right? So there's a lot that I'm not covering in this video about that. Encourage you to subscribe to the channel. I'll be coming out with more videos about investment approaches, both pre-retirement and once you've retired. But for this video, kind of just keeping it conceptual at this point. Okay, so now, what if you're somebody who is wanting to retire before, you want to retire at 55 or 56 or, sometime, before age 60 or 65. What are some of those other areas that you could prioritize in saving to best prepare for that situation? So some of the biggest issues that I see for somebody retiring before age 65 is that even for somebody who's saved quite well, let's say, they've got a few $1 million, somewhere between 2 and 5 million that they've saved up, is that most of their retirement savings is in pre-tax retirement accounts. It's in their 401k or it's in their IRA or some combination of those. And obviously that's great. And there are ways to plan around and make the income plan work, make early retirement work, even if you have mostly pre-tax money. But ideally, you'd have some money in other account. Maybe if I could put together kind of an order of operations. So let's just say you're in your 50s, high earning, and you have the ability to save. So all else, and this is somebody you're going to retire early, like before age 65. So first, maximizing pre-tax savings. The idea there being that we want to get tax deductions in the years where your income is the highest, assuming that in retirement your income is going to be lower, or because of the mix of assets, Social Security, rental income, or other things, you're going to have the flexibility to kind of manage your tax brackets to a greater extent than you're able to do now. So that's based on a big assumption, though. So if you haven't done projections of kind of your retirement and have a good sense of where your taxes are going to be, just kind of tread lightly here. But if you've done that and you're, then all of a sudden you can start making these decisions. So you want to maximize getting tax deductions. Now, once you've done that, the next thing you want to do is, if your 401k plan, your company plan allows it, what I like to have people do is make excess after-tax contributions. And not to go into a lot of detail here, but if you've ever heard of the mega backdoor Roth strategy, this is what it is. So within your 401k plan, let's say you've maxed out your contribution and your catch-up contribution. Well, within some people's plans, the administrator will allow them to contribute even more after-tax money and then allow them to convert that to Roth either on a regular basis, like every pay period, or a couple of times a year or something like that. It's essentially a way for a very high income earner to get more money into tax-free Roth than you can because you're over the income limits. The next thing is that if you have money in IRA accounts, I like to have people move that money back into their company 401k plans so that they are able to make backdoor Roth contributions without having to deal with any of the IRA aggregation rules. So if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. But subscribe to the channel, and I'm sure I'll have some more fun and painfully technical videos to explain some of this stuff. But I like to have people move their IRA money back into their 401k accounts so that they can more easily, accurately make backdoor Roth contributions. Then after these Roth contributions, frankly, just building up after-tax savings in a brokerage account. So, opening up a brokerage account, Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard, wherever you want, and starting to save in, high-yield money market. And then depending on, your length of time and the amount of time before you're going to retire, also building up some equities, some stock positions, with low-cost passive ETFs. These are more tax efficient, and having that balance of cash as well as growth investments within a brokerage account will give you a lot of flexibility if you're going to retire before age 65. So this is going into being able to make tax efficient plan, being able to qualify for subsidized health care. I've got a lot of videos on that topic specifically. So hopefully this video, what I hope you take away from this is it's giving you permission to not be in a state of freaking out if you're in this, in your 50s and you feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to save every penny and put it into my retirement account. And if I don't, I'm irresponsible, I'm financially reckless, whatever the case is. Because by this point, if you've already saved earlier in your career, you're going to see that your investments are now shouldering more of the burden than you may have given them credit for. The growth on your investments is going to have a greater impact on the outcome than your contributions at this point. But that's because you were responsible and you did a great job saving early in your career. So congratulations, high five. And you can feel free to take care of some of those other family responsibilities or other kind of financial goals that you might have in mind that are important to you at this phase of life. Now, if you do have the extra money to continue saving, then that's where I'll get into preparing yourself for early retirement by maximizing some of these other saving avenues that I just discussed. So hopefully this is all helpful and it's going to have you set up and better prepared for a confident early retirement. Now that you understand why retirement savings can grow significantly and some of the different changes that happen as you get into your 50s, you'll be thinking about, I'm sure, how some of these things might apply to your situation. Timing and strategy are very important. So if you'd like some extra help with all of this, or you want to learn how to optimize your plan, or you just want to see if you're on track for your own retirement, click the link below and take our free quiz, and we'll see you in the next one.